I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. Randy Robinson here, and I just love the testimonies of what God does in people's lives. And if you're old like me and you're looking at the generations following and you're going, man, Lord, do something. Do we have any hope? Yes, always. God does amazing things with situations that you think are completely impossible. And just to put a little emphasis on that truth today, I have a young man named Michael Heil. He is with me. He has a book out telling his experience and, the things that he's gone through. You'll hear some of them. It's called Pursued, and I love the title because that is really the heart of God. I mean, we think sometimes that he just can't wait to get us and correct our mistakes, but if you look in Scripture, that story about the prodigal son is really about the father of the prodigal son. Someone who's just waiting on us to come home so he can put a ring on our finger, put a robe on us, give us a feast. And once I think we understand that, you start to see a little bit of the hope that is in Christ. And I would say our only hope. So with that, Michael, great to have you today on Life Today Live. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Randy. I'm really grateful to be here.
I'm gonna kind of turn it over to you a little bit here. I just want to hear how did you get to the place you were at? What were some of the things going on in your head? I guess kind of show us the pig pen before we talk about the return home, because man, you were in the muck.
I sure was. I like to phrase it like this. I was raised to believe that I was a sophisticated monkey, that there was no meaning to my existence, that I came from a bomb. My origin was a cosmic mishap. There was no meaning or purpose to it. When I died, I turned to dirt and I lost everything that I ever lived for. That's what they taught me in school. Yeah. The world was just telling me, hey, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow you die. And I looked at Christianity, which there was very little of in the place I grew up, but there was enough of to look at it and say, well, all that religion, it doesn't look like they're enjoying life. and I didn't know enough about it. And all the world around me was just saying, hey, the best way to live life is through drugs and through drinking and through partying and through hooking up, because these things make you feel good. And all I could think was, well, life is short. We better live it to its fullest while we can, because once it's gone, it's over for good. And that really led to me just indulging in all the things people said should give me pleasure. Mm-hmm. But the more I had them, the more I needed them. And at some point I couldn't function without them. And it was just a fleeting pleasure. None of it was lasting. Mm. It was temporary. It was deceitful. And it left me scrambling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, did you grow up there in Utah?
I did.
So a lot of Mormons in your town?
A whole lot of them.
I'm curious, because that's a whole other kind of conversation to a degree, but did that have any influence on your perception of Christianity?
Yes. So my population was 80% Mormon, and there was one church within a 15-mile radius, and it was all old people. So right. I didn't even meet born again Christians my age until I moved away to college. Wow. And they're praying for people. They're like, hey, bring us your drug addict friends. Like, we're going to minister to them. Like, there's hope and healing, and God does miracles. And all this stuff that I thought was reserved in the history books, it all just came out, and I realized it was real.
I want to talk about that, but so is this high school that you started using drugs in high school and
junior high?
Junior
13 to 18, really.
Oh my gosh, are we talking smoking a little weed, or how hardcore was it?
It started with weed and over-the-counter pills, so cough medicine, just getting high on cough medicine. Really? And things like that.
And where did it end?
It ended with me as a heroin addict, completely incapable of facing a day without some sort of substance pulsing through my veins. I wake up and all I could think about was my next fix and where to get it. And it didn't matter what it was.
Jeez, yeah. I mean, you know, you see, we see people like that on the streets a lot. You were still at home, I'm guessing.
Somehow my parents refused to give up on me. They just kept loving me and loving me. They should have kicked me out because I was putting them through hell itself. My mother was up all night just praying. I would disappear for days at a time, and she would just pray her heart out for me, just wondering where her prodigal son was. And I would be overdosing. I would be doing all sorts of ridiculous things.
Now, so your parents, were they Christians? Are they Christians?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting. I mean, you're in a Christian home in the middle of Mormon land, addicted
Yes.
to drugs in a hardcore way. Where'd you go to college?
I went undergrad at the University of Utah and then graduate school at Wheaton College.
Something happened for you to go to grad school at Wheaton.
Yeah.
Right? So let's go to walk us through the college experience where, I mean, you met Christians your own age, and just, I want to hear how God used that.
So leading up to college, I think it's really important to add this. I had been arrested half a dozen times with dozens of allegations, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And hitting rock bottom couldn't change me. I had court-ordered counseling. My license was suspended for multiple years. I had multiple DUIs. I had AA meetings that were mandatory. I had all this counseling that was forced on me. I had thousands of dollars in fines, and none of it could wake me up. And I kept running this life people said should be meaningful and enjoyable and fun. And I realized the more I succeeded in this life, the more messed up I was, more messed up my life was. And I realized I was running a race to see who could screw up their life the most, and I was winning it. And it didn't matter, I was getting paid to party, and that any high school student or college student would be envious of me, and a lot of them were. I knew that that life was empty. I had the best that it had to offer, and it was completely void of meaning. And so I reassessed, what else is life for? And I saw this other trajectory, these people who were being successful and who were earning money and who were going on nice vacations. And I thought maybe that's a viable alternative. So even while I was doing drugs, I kind of switched my life, and it was extremely hard. But I started focusing on schooling and education, and just hoping that that had a little bit more meaning. And of course, it was just as empty. It was both of these things. They were just rat races. And it's like, once you hit a goal, you're still empty and you need more. And maybe you're happy for a moment or a week or a month, but you get that job, you get that house, you get that spouse, and then you need more. And at some point I just realized it's like a hamster on a wheel.
Yeah.
And when I died, I lost it all anyway.
Yeah.
And that's when God interjected into it.
Well, I mean, you went from hedonism to materialism, and both of them, I mean, one is less destructive than the other on the outside, but both just as empty. I find that interesting. All right. So how did God intervene?
So my first night on campus, I met 3 Christians, and we ended up staying up till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, just talking about God. And it was a campus of 35,000 people, and I could not shake them. None of us had the same majors. We shouldn't have been running into each other, but everywhere I went, these same 3 people kept popping up. And every time I'd see them, they'd invite me to a Bible study, and I very politely declined because I thought that was lame. And they finally convinced me by telling me there would be food and girls. And so,
right.
superficial, shallow college kid that I was, I thought, okay, I think I can make it here. And when I went, I found friendship that was real and deep and meaningful. And these people were so considerate. And I had come from this drug life where people only contact you when they want to use you, when they need something. And for me, as a drug dealer, as someone who always had the connections and the girls and the parties, people would always just use me. And now I'm in this new paradigm where these people are they're loving Jesus, they're praying for each other, they're talking about their faults and their problems and the plan that God has for their lives. And it really just struck me that if God is real, then he put us here for a reason, and he knows exactly why he made us and how he made us. He wired our hearts together. I don't even know what I want, let alone what I need.
Mm. Mm.
And yet, if God is real, he knows exactly why I'm here, what he made me for, and more than that, why I malfunction so often.
How long did it take to kind of break off the old habits and well, start to form your own relationship with God?
It took years.
Really?
And what I'm explaining here is I kept having encounters with God. A God I wasn't even sure I believed in kept interjecting himself into my life through these concrete miracles I couldn't deny. And that included him breaking me free from a jail cell, to my parents getting me a lawyer. Even for my second DUI, they paid for this lawyer. And he was a Christian, and he stood up and he represented me. And the court deemed me not guilty for a crime I had committed because God did a miracle and he erased all the evidence, all the drugs from the blood tests that they had performed. And I just realized it was the gospel happening right in front of me. It was, Jesus stands on our defense. Even though we're guilty, we're innocent. He ensures we're innocent. And I had seen so many things pointing to him and so many miracles pointing to him, but I still couldn't get it. And I think part of that is because of the hurt that religion had done in my life, that the Mormon church always claimed they're the one true church, and I thought they represented all of Christianity. And I think a lot of us have been hurt by religion before, and we're judging God based on how Christians had treated us when they weren't acting like Christians.
Yeah.
And those people might not have even been Christians, but we're still judging God based on that instead of on who he is.
So what? Yeah, no doubt about that. And anytime someone wants to talk to me about how bad Christians are, I'm like, what about Christ? Do you know what he said? Do you know what he did? I agree with you that people are faulty and people are often wrong. People are messed up. We're in agreement. They're hypocrites, lots of hypocrites in the church. So, you can join. One more won't matter, but what about Christ, how did you get to the what about Christ part where things changed?
So with God working in my heart in all these different ways, it climaxed when I had a skiing accident where I shattered my femur. My leg was detached from the rest of my body.
Oh.
I was hanging on the edge of a cliff in the backcountry outside of cell phone service. And I was confident I was dying, and the pain was so severe, I wanted to die. My sister was with me, and she was trying to call 911. Our phones didn't work, and I'm screaming like death itself in the background, and suddenly she just shakes me because it's so loud, and she's just trying to calm me down and trying to calm me down. And in the midst of all of that, I realize, God, I'm about to come and meet you. I'm going to meet you soon. And I've lived my whole life for myself. I've lived my whole life in rebellion to you, almost like I'm running the opposite way with my middle finger out. And now I'm going to meet you. And in that moment, I just prayed and I said, God, I believe if you want to, you can save me. But if not, then thank you for my life. And I saw all the stupid things I'd done, all the messed up things I'd done. And within 30 seconds of saying that prayer, 2 crosses descended on me, two crosses bathed in a background of blood red. It was two ski patrol,
Oh yeah.
and they just happened to have an hour-long break. And God sent them exactly where I was at when I needed them. They said, "Hey, we've got an hour, just enough time to go backcountry." And He sent them for me.
Hmm.
And when they saw my leg, they saw they cut off my snow pants. They saw it was detached from the rest of the body, just hanging there. And they told me, "Okay, there are two arteries that go in your leg past your femur. If either of those are cut, you're going to bleed to death in the next 5 to 10 minutes." So that was the second miracle. The first one was praying for help and God sending it. The second one was just the fact it takes 2 to 3 pounds of pressure per square inch to cut an artery. It takes 1,800 pounds of pressure per square inch to break your femur bone. So 1,800 pounds of pressure broke my femur bone, cut it diagonally, tore apart my tendon, my ligament, my muscle, everything in there, except not even three of those 1,800 to 2,000 pounds touched my artery because God was protecting it. And all I could ask, especially once the doctor went over that with me, he said, "It's a miracle you're alive." But all I could ask was, "God, why would you save me? If there's anyone you could have let die, it would have been me. Why did you save me?" And in that moment, I met Jesus. Just like you were saying, Randy, him, God, I realized he's not a pile of bricks. And he's not a set of outdated rules. He's a living being and he represents himself and he loves us. And I don't know why, because if there's anyone he should not love, it would have been me. And he still saved my life. And more than that, he died for me.
Yeah, and that's the gospel right there. That's the beauty of it right there. Even while we're yet sinners, Christ died for us. And it's his will that none should perish. And it just, as a snow skier, I'm cringing over here. And not everybody knows a lot of the snow patrol, or ski patrol. I don't think all of them do, but a lot of them do. They wear the cross symbol, the medical kind of symbol. And so that is wild. And now I get, by the way, the cover of your book, because there's one of those ski patrol symbols right there. You're right there under the word pursued.
That's it.
Yeah. So that is the book, by the way, Pursued by Michael J. Heil. If you want to get the details on the story, but where do you go from there? I mean, obviously the hospital. How long was that?
So it took about 3 months before I could walk again with titanium rods and bolts and screws in my leg holding me together. And of course, I was prescribed a plethora of opiates.
Yeah.
And it was such a battle getting prescribed those. And I did end up abusing them. And that broke my heart into pieces. Just this fact that, God, you saved me. Even though you knew I would stab you in the back, even though you knew I would keep struggling and keep failing, you chose to save my life. And I remember going through that healing process, and my mom would just sit at the foot of my bed and she would just read the Bible to me. And she was just so grateful to have her son, her prodigal child, her little vagabond, saying, I just need Jesus. I just want to read the Bible to you, and just crying out for God's help.
Yes. So the detox, though, I mean, that's the hard thing. And a lot of good people, I mean, look, I got titanium plates in my face, so I get it. And I don't want to start too much here online, but I mean, you can pray for the pain to go away, but it doesn't always, and so there's times I think that you can take what God's made, everything God made, but the addictive aspect of it is problematic. I hate drugs. I get off them as quick as I can if I take some for like a post-surgery kind of thing. What was your detox or withdrawal process?
Yeah. So by God's grace, I was able to stop using heroin and all the other hard drugs. And I've been clean from those for 12 years, 12 or 13 years. With weed, even after I got saved, I tried it a few times. I tried it, I think, 3 times. And each time it was like the heavens opened up and I saw God's glory, and it terrified me. It scared me out of my boots. And after that, I just thought, I used to need this thing just to survive. I couldn't even appreciate a day without it. I don't need it anymore. I'm fine. And so God delivered me from that one as well. But a lot of the other things I had to fight for.
Yeah.
So nicotine, that was one that on and off for a decade. I had to fight just to, especially during stressful times, it was something that I would turn to. And then alcohol in moderation, if you're free to drink, is okay. And so that's a very fine balance because your society's doing it. And I'm healed. I'm a new creation, and it doesn't rule me the way it used to. But I also have to be very intentional about it. And sometimes it's just not worth doing it.
Yeah, and I find that a lot of people that have a detrimental struggle with one particular thing. I mean, just something like I know some people that were in the rock and roll industry and all that went with it, the sex and the drugs and the alcohol, and they got to the point where they're like, I can't even listen to rock music anymore because they had an association with all these other negative things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so anyone who's been addicted to alcohol, who's basically ruined their life, the lives of others with their use of alcohol, I mean, just getting rid of it is usually like the only course where they can stay because they can go back. I mean, I got another friend who is a well-known rock star, and man, he can't touch it because it just triggers him in a physical way that just, man, it just messes him up bad. So I mean, God knows, and He'll walk us through. How did you get to Wheaton? What was that process?
So after being saved, it was ironic because all I wanted my whole life was to get out of Utah. And when I went through that accident, I met God. I encountered him and I told him, Lord, you're enough for me. I'll stay here as long as you're with me. You're all I need. You're all I've been looking for. And in that moment, I surrendered that idol that to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, you're enough, God. And ironically, when I did that, he launched me out like a wrecking ball. And he introduced me to different mission organizations. I worked with YWAM, I worked with OM, and that's where I've done all this traveling and all this mission work. I went to China and learned Mandarin Chinese and and ministered to the underground house church. And I fell so in love with mission work that I thought this is my calling. And I went to Wheaton College because of their program was really highly reputed.
Yep.
So I did that, and then ironically, God called me back home. He said, "Hey, you remember that place you grew up in? And remember that promise you gave me where you said you would stay there because I'm enough for you? Now I'm calling you back."
Mm.
And this place is less than 1% evangelical Christian here, so it really is a mission field. There's less than in the 1040 window. It's an important place to be.
Well, you know, if you talk about Mormons with God's grace, you're gonna have a lot of long conversations.
Very long
Right.
and often very unfruitful. That's why sometimes it's more appropriate to just spend time with drug addicts, just like Jesus did, right? You spend time with these people who are like, I know I need something. I know I need Jesus. I know I need help.
So is that what a lot of what you found yourself doing? I know you've been to jail for other reasons than being incarcerated. Is that where you're finding a lot of ministry?
I'm running a program called Evangelism Explosion for our church, my local church, and that's a lot of ministry to Mormons, and there are some drug addicts and skater kids. It's just a mesh of everything that you encounter with that. But additionally, I am going to different detention programs and different schools and sharing with them as well.
What do you? By the way, I guess your parents are thrilled with you now. Yeah.
They're thrilled with God, but yes, they.
Yeah, and you know you're right, but I also know. I mean, just they're thankful. I bet they're just thankful. You know, what do you say? What do you say to a parent who's got a child who's where you were, who's running the wrong way, pursuing the wrong things? maybe addicted, maybe in trouble, and they're like, man, I don't see any hope for my kid, because that's heartbreaking, man.
Yeah, that is heartbreaking. Don't give up on them. Please don't give up on them. And when you're weary and when you have nothing left to give, just remember how God has loved you through all of your ups and all of your downs, and let that be your fuel. Don't pull the love from the reservoir of your own heart. Pull it from His reservoir, because God is with you in this mess, and He's with your child in this mess, and He knows exactly what they need. And believe it or not, He is working. He's doing stuff. He's doing more to reach them than we could ever imagine, and He loves them and He cares. But also have those difficult conversations. Don't be afraid. I know they keep shutting you out. I know it seems impossible, like you're talking to a stone, but eventually all the fertilizer, all the good things you're pouring into it, that God can break those stone cold callous hearts, and it'll pour in. God can redeem all that time you're investing, but set boundaries and follow through with the consequences. Don't enable them. They're manipulative. They'll keep manipulating you. They're not going to grow from counseling as long as they want this lifestyle. And they just need to know that you're for them and that you love them, but they also need to face the consequences of their own actions. If you keep facing it for them, then and bailing them out, they're never going to learn, and they're never going to grow up.
And interesting you say that, because you got bailed out at one point. Did you also have to pay a lot of? Did you not get bailed out a lot of times too?
I think if I would have had to face my consequences sooner, I think I probably would have come out of it earlier.
Interesting.
I think because they kept bailing me out, I just kept doing it and thinking I could get away with anything and thinking I was invincible, until literally the whole world had to crumble.
Yeah.
But if I would have had to face the smaller things, I really believe it would have made me at least aware of how my actions were affecting my family, my loved ones, and how much it was hurting them.
That is so hard for a parent too, because you don't know when to let you don't want your children to ever suffer, you know. And and that really requires, I don't think there's a magic formula for it. That requires discernment, prayer, and there will be times when you step in, when you intervene, and there will be times when you don't. And that's a hard thing for a parent. Whew. Yeah. So for maybe someone who is stuck through this interview because they relate to you, because they're where you were, whether it's pursuing the materialism, or whether it's addicted or partying, or even if it's just someone who's like, I've kind of rejected this God thing, but I'm kind of exploring now. I just, man, I feel empty everywhere else. So, this guy says there's something else out there. I don't know. What do you say to that skeptic who is searching?
Yeah, I would say that Jesus makes this promise. He says, "Peace I leave with you, peace I give unto you. Peace not as the world gives, but my peace I give to you." And His peace is something that's lasting, and it's something that's real, and it's something that makes you whole from the inside out. It makes you complete, where you're okay to face yourself in the morning, and where you're at peace with the people around you. You have good relationships. You're whole. You're healing. You're not just using everyone, and your life spiraling out of control. And in this world, the peace that it gives us, it's this tiny, transient, fleeting thing that always leaves us empty. But Jesus is promising us, He promises us something full, and it's not easy, but nothing valuable is. It takes work to buy a home. It takes a lot of intentionality and savings and planning. This is valuable. And really what God's doing is He's calling us to flee from these empty things and to pursue something that's full. But He also promises us, you don't have to go through it alone. Everything you've tried probably has failed, if you're like me.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling of waking up every day and thinking, I'm hopeless, there's nothing I can do, that feeling eats you alive. But there is something God can do, and He loves you more than you could ever imagine. And it's not some transient thing. It's real. It's life changing. That He's sitting in heaven He's interceding for you day in and day out. He's praying for you. You're the center of his heart. He cares, and he can make the difference that you can't.
Yeah. And for you, it was definitely life-changing and life-saving. So appreciate you, man. Do you speak? I know you speak, but if someone's like, hey, we need this in our town and we're willing to bring you, do you travel?
Yes. Yeah, and it's all on my website. They can book it. Everything's right there.
Okay. That's what I was getting. All right. You can go to Michael J. It's pronounced Heil, .com. Looks like Heil, but it's pronounced Heil. Michael J. Heil, if you're listening, .com, and get information about him as well as the book. The book is Pursued. Looks just like this. You can get it where you get books, and you might need to buy that for someone in your life, and that's okay. That'd be a good thing. Michael, man, I love hearing what God's done and now continues to do in your life, and you're getting to see a lot of impact on people. I'm guessing you're collecting stories of people that are hearing what God's done in your life and saying, I want that in my life, and seeing some good things.
Yes. Yeah. Last Easter, I actually got to speak at the facility that I was locked up in as a kid. And we did 2 services there, and every single kid that attended raised their hand and just said, I need more. I need Jesus. I'm tired of running this race on my own. I can't do it anymore, and I need his help. That was really, really encouraging.
I mean, isn't that in a sense, not to put a wrong term in this place, but isn't there a kind of a high that comes from that?
There can be, and actually, Randy, there's different studies that talk about the combating addiction, combating hedonism with eudaimonic happiness. So combating this idea of all we live for is a pleasure or a feeling, with we can live for a purpose. So it's when you give someone a purpose to live for, then that can actually fuel their soul in a way where they can trade off this addiction. And there's no greater purpose than living for God's glory.
Yeah, and serving others too. And you know what? I think what we're seeing there is a genuine thing God created, because there is a satisfaction of the soul when you're pursuing God, when you're living where in the sweet spot of where He wants you to be. And I think the counterfeit would be the drug high, and the hedonistic high, even the materialism high. So I think you're onto something. Thank you again, Michael. I appreciate your testimony. I appreciate you sharing it with us today.
Thank you, Randy.
Man, you guys out there watching, you want to hit that share button and say, look what God's done in one person's life, and look what He wants to do in all of our lives. You are never beyond hope. If you're still breathing, God has a plan for you. And it's time to maybe turn around and let God catch you. He's been pursuing you. So appreciate you being here. Come back. We've got more for you here on Life Today Live.